Hi everyone, here's the Bookamics once again. Not quite as insightful as Better Than Food book reviews, but with 100% less inexplicable silences. And disgusting American coffee. Last weekend, through a sickly weekend at home, as opposed to the other weekends of my life, where I stay at home but I'm healthy, I managed to finish City on Fire by Garth Hallberg, which is this massive novel which became kind of famous in the last few months because it was some kind of literary case. Publishing houses apparently fought over this thing, and eventually it got published for a few $1 million. It was like really crazy. Also, another thing you should probably know is that Garth Hallberg has been working on this thing since quite a few years, and he has rewritten it several times. I think about 10 times, something like that I heard, which is something I respect massively, that kind of dedication to the building of a novel. Now, the first thing I have to say with my review is that City on Fire reminded me a lot of several other works. The first one clearly was Underworld by Don DeLillo, because that's another 800-900 page book about New York City, largely about New York City throughout the second half of the 20th century, about the culture of that time. It intertextualizes a lot with art, especially conceptual art. Here the art used is mostly painting and music, but really the image of Underworld was clearly there. The way the different social strata of the city are handled, it was clearly there. Another book that was in my mind while I read was The Rotters Club by Jonathan Coe. Here you see an Italian edition, which is a book about the 70s and about the birth of the early years of punk rock music as lived through the eyes of adolescents at that time. The Rotters Club is set in England, by the way, in Birmingham, whereas of course City on Fire is in New York. Again, The Fifth Horseman by Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins, hands down one of the best thrillers I've ever read, one of the most enjoyable and exciting literary experiences you can get. And also The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft, but that might just be a personal obsession of mine. But at the same time, City on Fire, with its insistence on the facelessness of corporations in New York, on the importance of writing as an act against these obscure powers, kinda reminded me of that strain of Lovecraftian horror. And if all this name dropping is getting you excited, it shouldn't. Not because City on Fire is good or bad or anything, but because it's not like it's a mixture of these things. It reminded me a lot of those, but it's pretty much doing its own thing. And one of the most difficult things I had to do while reading City on Fire, especially with the first 100 pages, was getting where the fuck the book was going. Because it's not really clear, I think, whether this is going to be some kind of social commentary or some kind of historical novel with a focus on the struggle of the lower classes or the excess of the upper classes. Is this going to be a thriller? Is this going to be a book about adolescence in the city? Is it going to be a book about the rise of punk music? It's really difficult to get where the author is going, in what kind of genre or like subgenre he wants this book to fall, and this is largely a good thing, because of course genres are bullshit generally speaking, and it's good that you don't really get what's going on as far as the author's intentions are concerned. It keeps you hooked, I think. It makes you want to see where the book is going to, it's going to go, or what's going to happen. Is it going to turn into a thriller? Is it going to turn into a, family saga of some sort? Spoiler alert, the book is going to do kind of all those things together, but that's besides the point. City on Fire relies heavily on cliffhangers. This book is endless, really, it's fucking immense, but each single chapter is quite short. Most chapters, I think, are like 3 or 4 pages long, and most of them end with a cliffhanger. And not all of these cliffhangers are used in the best possible ways. Like, a cliffhanger should, in my opinion, should give you enough stuff to make you interested in what's going to happen. Like, the first season of Lost, the TV series, got it completely right. There are people on this island, like, walking through the jungle, and they hear something running through the jungle. Oh my god, what is it? Oh my god, it's a polar bear! What is a polar bear doing in the jungle? Let's find out in the next episode. That's amazing. Here, most of the time, you have people walking through the jungle and they hear something running through the jungle, and let's find out in the next chapter. And again, usually between like the chapter in which you get the cliffhanger and the follow-up, like 50, maybe 100 pages pass, and eventually you don't even remember why you were supposed to be excited about what's going to happen to these characters. You're like, oh yeah, there's this one guy who was going to die, let's see what happens. Another narrative technique Hallberg uses a lot is anticipation, which means like, you know, telling you, giving you pieces of the plot, what's going to happen in the following pages, and then explaining the way it is going to happen, which is also something Stephen King does a lot in his fiction, with varying degrees of success. Here Hallberg sometimes kind of fucks up, but most of the time he uses the technique brilliantly. There is a passage in the book, an intermission really, in the second half of the novel that basically spoils you, like, not really the entire ending of the book, but some elements of the ending of the book, and at the same time it works brilliantly. It's really, really well done and well executed. I talk about an intermission, actually an interlude, because the book is divided into 7 books, actually 7 parts really. Between each one there is an intermission, which are these like generally quirky parts. I don't know if you can see with, you know, like typewritten, or you get a number of a magazine, this kind of quirkiness you get all the time in contemporary literature for whatever reason. Here most of these interludes are really effective, and they are like, they're there for a reason. I don't know if that's the reason why this book costs like 18 fucking euros even in paperback edition. Maybe that's not the reason at all. Also, Purity by Franzen costs the same, and that's not quirky at all, not really. At the same time, I can't say they don't work. I can say they're there without a reason. Maybe some of these interludes could have been standard chapters written in the same font as the rest of the book. Others shouldn't have been so. They work. This division of the book in parts or books or whatever is not without its reason, and really each single book or part reads like a different one. They usually have their own pace and rhythm and even style and vibe, and the division is really, it's there for a reason again. And one of my problems with this book, one of its flaws, but also I think maybe its biggest asset, is that the second part, and especially books 5 and 6, yeah, books 5 and 6 are definitely better than like the first half of the book, like largely, really. Not because the first half was bad, not at all, I liked it a lot, maybe I didn't love it, but I liked the first part, but because the second half is really, really brilliant all the way through and really great. And part of me wonders whether this might not just have been a 300-400 page book about the last night in the novel, the events around the last night in the novel, with proper flashbacks and flash forwards. But at the same time, I'm not sure that's an easy answer to, you know, the fact that the book has like several levels of quality within it, because the first half is not really superfluous. I couldn't really point to a part and say that part is unneeded, it should have been left out. I mean, I could, because I'm an asshole who believes he's a literary critic, but at the same time I see why the author left it there. Since today I feel like name dropping, another book I could compare City on Fire to is The 27th City by Jonathan Franzen, which is not the kind of family saga people usually associate with Franzen. It is kind of a postmodern family saga, but also a thriller, and rather thrilling at that too. And City on Fire is kind of the same thing, and maybe a bit better. And please notice that to me 27th City is nearly a masterpiece, really. It was maybe my favorite book of 2013, something like that. City on Fire portrays the dynamics of a family going through a difficult time in a more humane way. Franzen has his, you know, ironical, very almost satirical, very acid take on the American society, whereas Hallberg kind of has that, but he is more sympathetic toward his characters. He is not that kind of asshole-ish author a la Updike / Franzen. It's a more uplifting book in many ways, even though it deals with lots of shit, really, as in, of course, terrible stuff. And eventually, at the end of the day, I think that if it just had sold its own plot a bit better, it could have really been a masterpiece. It's still a great book, it's still a great novel. I'm glad I read it. I'd like to see Hallberg, because he writes like really good, really amazingly good. I'd like to see Hallberg tackle like a smaller project, maybe something in the range of 400-500 pages, something more of the same, really. More of the same, but with a bit more courage in it. I'd like to see some stuff blow up in Hallberg's next book. That said, do I recommend this book? Do I suggest you read City on Fire? Not since June from last year by Frank Herbert have I read a book which I wasn't sure whether I kinda disliked, I loved completely, I was in the middle, I wasn't sure until the last part of this book, and now I'm sure I really like this book. It's great. That doesn't necessarily mean I recommend it, because as a person I usually tend to be very careful when I recommend a 900-page book. This is one of those cases. What I'm going to say is, if the idea of City on Fire interests you, if the idea of a novel set in New York City in the 70s, talking a lot about what it is to live in New York City and to be in New York City and all things New York City, and if you're interested in a novel set in the early years of punk music, do read this book. If you like the idea behind City on Fire, do read the novel. You're not going to be disappointed at all. If you're just like, I want to read a good book that's came out recently, I'm not sure I would suggest City on Fire, mostly because of an issue of size, but not only. Take it or leave it. That's my take on the book. I have one final complaint to close the review with, and please take this seriously. Now, this is my board games collection. Now, it's not endless or huge, but you can see I'm kinda serious about this shit. See this one here? This is Risico, which is the Italian version of Risk. And, you know, there's a scene in the book with two characters playing Risk, and there are two characters playing Risk, which is fucking impossible, because Risk is 3 players or more. Know your shit, Mr. Hallberg, know your shit. I know a few YouTubers out there are going to read the book in the next few months, or maybe they've already read it. So if you've done, let me know what you think about it, let me know what was your opinion on this book. I'm really excited to hear more reviews and opinions on City on Fire, because I know some people kinda hate it on principle, like, yeah, it's a literary case, so it must suck balls. Other people already love it. I'd really like to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for watching once again, guys. Do watch Better Than Food book reviews. His videos are awesome. Bye, guys.